Hello. As you can see, the game I'm going to be talking about today is Mare Nostrum Empires, if that's not how you pronounce it. I don't know the proper pronunciation, but that's how I'm going to be saying it, Mare Nostrum Empires. Anyway, this came out in 2016. I believe it was a Kickstarter. That's not how I got this game. I bought it later used, but I did get a Kickstarter copy, so it does have some of the things that were exclusive, I think, in the Kickstarter. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, let's get started with setup. Alright, first thing you'll do is place the map in the center of the table between all players. If you were playing with 5 players, you then place the leaderboard and Heroes and Wonder board next to the map. However, if you were playing with 4 players, you would place this leaderboard on top of the map and then scoot this over, and that eliminates some of the provinces that players can play in. And if you're going to be playing with 3 players like I am, then you actually place both of these boards on the map, and that shrinks the map even more for 3 players, so players won't be spread out as much, so the provinces that are covered by the leaderboard and Heroes and Wonder board cannot be accessed, so players will only be able to access the provinces and areas of the map that are not covered by these 2 boards. So that's how I'll be setting up as 3 players. Next, you'll sort your commodities into like piles, so these are all grain. Anyway, you have different sorts of commodities. So as I said, you got grain, gems, gladiators, sheep, wine, spices, oil, gold, stone, ceramic, wood, metal, papyrus, and then you've got coins that are all the same. They're just coins. And then you have legendary commodities, which they have a different border, as you can see, than the other commodities. And there's actually one of each of these type of commodities that is a legendary commodity, and you just shuffle those and place those in a face-down stack somewhere near the board. All the other ones are face-up somewhere near the board. Then you just sort and place your legendary cities, your markets, your caravans, battle dice, temples, all, I have them in these token holders or whatever somewhere near the board, but you just sort them and place them somewhere near the playing area. As I mentioned, I got a used Kickstarter edition, so I'm not sure if the standard edition comes with these plastic buildings, markets, caravans, because the game I got also did come with counters that you could use instead. So these are the markets, which are the same as these, and these are the caravans, which are the same as these. And these are the cities and legendary cities and temples, which I have little plastic miniatures for. So again, I'm not sure if there's a standard version that doesn't include those and only includes the counters. I just know what I got in the version that I purchased used. So I'll be using the little plastic cities and caravans and markets and such for my demonstration here. Then each player chooses one of the empires to play. You can do that randomly or let players choose. I'm gonna play the Carthage Empire, Greece, and Rome. So you'll take the little empire mat and put that in your player area. You'll also take the matching player screen that matches your empire and place that behind your player mat. So these screens are supposed to sit like this behind your player mat, but playing solo and trying to show that from above doesn't work out too well, so I'll be just placing my player screen face down, but normally you would keep your commodities and coins behind your player screen so the other players don't always know exactly what you have. I'll go ahead and just keep mine face down like this for my instructional video here. You'll take the components that match your empire's color. You got triremes, legions, which will look like a helmet of some sort. The empires each look a little differently, like that's the Carthage one, and for instance here is the Greek or the Greece legion. And you'll also have a fort, so you'll take all your forts and your control markers and your leader track markers and place those all in your play area. Then you'll also take your starting hero that matches your empire and place it on your empire mat there where your starting hero goes. And each starting hero has an individual little bonus or ability that it gives you, and we'll talk more about what those are later. Then you look at your player screen, your empire screen, and place your starting units and markets and caravans as shown there on your 3 starting provinces. So for example, we see that Carthage starts with a control marker in Numidia here, so we'll put a control marker there. And then he also has 2 caravans, so we'll take 2 caravans and place them on the spots. If you don't have these plastic miniatures, then you'd put the corresponding counter. Here in Africa, we've got a market and 2 caravans, so we get a market, place it here where it shows, and 2 caravans. You'll also see that this is the capital. It's the capital city province for Carthage. You can see that because the control marker is printed on the map instead of a control marker being placed. Also, you see this border around this city means it's a capital city. So we won't put a regular city marker there. We'll put one of the capital city and legendary city markers there as shown here. And we also need a fort, so we'll put a fort in there. Alright, I think that's everything in that province. And then finally here in Libya, it looks like we get a control marker, a legion, and 2 caravans. Okay, so I've got those set up, control marker, 2 caravans, and a legion. And that completes setup of those 3 provinces for Carthage. And then we'll also collect the 9 resources shown here for Carthage. So 1 coin, 2 spice, 1 gold, 3 sheep, 1 gladiator, and 1 oil. So let me get those. Alright, I've got those. 1 coin, 2 spice, 1 gold, 3 sheep, 1 gladiator, and 1 oil. Now again, normally these would be behind this empire screen. You would have it picked up and have your commodities behind your screen. So the other players don't always know exactly what you have. But since I'm playing alone and trying to show how this works, I'm just going to put the screen flat. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the starting commodities and units and so forth placed on the map for the other 2 players. Alright, I've got the starting units and buildings and caravans and markets for both Rome and Greece placed out, as well as their 9 starting resources. So he's got more coins. And this guy's got several metal. Anyway, so they've got all their starting resources and their units and so forth. Then if you look on this player screen, it shows you where to put a leader track marker on the leaderboard. So for Carthage, on the trade trade line there, he'll put one on 7, so you take one of your mark. So he'll put this on the Roman numeral 7. The trade leader, you can see there, so that he'll put a marker up here at the top. Then for culture, he'll put one on 1, and for military, he'll put one on 2. So come over here and put one on 1 for, and he puts one on 2 for that. Alright, so I finished setting up the other Greece and Rome on the track here, and Greece starts as the leader. Greece starts as the culture leader, and Rome starts as the military leader. And we'll explain more about that, how they get set later. Next, we'll take these Heroes and Wonders tiles, oops, shuffle them up. We'll place 5 face up in these first 5 spots, and then the rest face down here. Now it says to do that in your first few games. After that, once you've become familiar with it, then you just place them all face up. But the way it'll work now is in your first few games, you just put 5 face up, the others face down, and then at the end of the build phase, which we'll talk about that later, if there are still not 5 face up because one of these has been purchased by somebody, then you turn, you flip another one face up, so you'll always have 5 face up. Alright, so I've got 5 face up: Lighthouse of Pharos, Ramses II, Perseus, Circe, and Castor and Pollux, and then the rest face down. And then finally you place the pyramids tile right here. And then you can give each player one of these player aid sheets. But other than that, that completes setup. We're set up for 3 players here. And now we're ready to start with how to play. Alright, so how do we play? Well, the game is played in rounds. Each round consists of 5 phases. You've got the collect resources phase, the trade resources phase, the build phase, the move and battle phase, and the claim leadership phase. So let's talk about the first phase, collect resources phase. Now, at the beginning in the first round of the game, you don't have to do the collect resources phase because you did that during setup, and that's where you got your commodities and your coins. But we can talk about how those are gathered, or how you know what to gather. And basically, you'll look for what caravans you have. For each caravan you collect the associated commodity or pictured commodity. So you would, if you were the Carthage player during the collect resources phase, you would collect 1 gold, 1 gladiator. Here, if you have a market, this one we don't have a market. Here we do have a market. If you have a market next to the caravan, then you end up collecting 2 of those. So 2 spice and 2 sheep, and here 1 sheep and 1 oil. And you'll see that's what we got. 2 spice when we set up. What was here? 2 spice, 1 gold, 3 sheep, 1 gladiator, and 1 oil. So that's how that was determined. You know, at the first round it shows you what you should get, but as the game goes and you get more provinces under your control, or maybe add another market or something, you'll collect more resources. You'll also collect, for cities that you control, you'll collect 1 coin. That's why we got the 1 coin here. Now, if you have a temple, then you collect 2 coins. So like Greece, you'll see they collected, their starting resources were 5 coins. That's because they had 2 cities here, a regular city and their capital city. So they each collect 1 coin, but because they have a temple, they started with a temple, they each collect 2 coins, and then they had one other regular city up here, so that was 1 additional coin. So that's why Greece started with 5 coins. And then they just got these few resources. That was 1 stone for this caravan, 1 grain, and 1 wine, and 1 oil. So that's what they got here: a stone, a grain, a wine, and an oil. So that's what you'll do in the collect resources phase. You'll collect commodities and coins depending on what cities and caravans and markets you have. There is another type of city you'll see that has a red border. That's a legendary city. So if you control a legendary city, then you'll see you gain a coin and a legendary commodity, which you just draw off the top of the stack, which you shuffled, so those are randomized. So you'll get, if you control a legendary city, you get 1 coin and 1 legendary commodity. If you had a temple, then you would get, 1 coin and 1 legendary commodity, and then your choice of either an additional coin or an additional legendary commodity. Now, legendary commodities work just like the regular other commodities. When we get into the build phase, we'll talk about how you spend those, but they work just the same as those commodities, except for you draw them from this stack. And as I mentioned during setup, in that stack there's one of each different type of commodity. So that's the collect resources phase. Everybody can do that simultaneously, or you may want to do it one at a time if you don't trust your other players and you want to make sure they're only collecting what they should be. But anyway, everybody collects the commodities and coins that they should, for the markets and cities that they own. And once that's done, that ends the collect resources phase. And again, for the first round of the game, that's already done during setup, so you wouldn't do anything during the collect resources phase in the first round of the game. And those resources that you collect go behind your player screen. Again, I just have mine on top of these player screens since I'm playing solo here. Alright, the next phase is the trade resources phase. Now, whoever is the market leader, which at the beginning of this game it is Carthage, they will take these 3 exchange markers, and you can see this one has 5 resources depicted on it. This one has 4 or 3 if you look at the other side. This one's 1 or 2. This one's 5 or blank. So whoever is the market leader, shown here on the market track, will have these exchange tokens, and they'll choose one of their choice to determine how many resources will be exchanged in the trade resources phase. So maybe this time he decides 3. So he's going to select this and put it up here in the number 1 spot on this leaderboard. So the trade leader chose 3. So everybody has to choose 3 of their resources, coins and or commodities that are behind their screen. Remember, this screen would be face up, and they'll choose 3 of them because that's the exchange token that was chosen, and place them face down in front of their player screen. So maybe the Carthage player chooses this one and this one and this one, so he'd put them face down in front of his player screen. Maybe the Greece player would choose to do 3 coins since he's got the most of those, and maybe the Rome player would choose this one and this one, and I don't know, maybe a coin. So depending on what exchange marker the trade leader places up there, that's how many resources you have to put in front of your player screen. Now once all players have placed their chosen resources in front of their player screen face down, then everybody flips those resources face up. Then the trade leader, which in this case is Carthage because they're the current trade leader, chooses one of the offered resources from the other player or from one of the other players. So maybe he wants one that he doesn't have, so he sees that Rome has offered this metal, so he chooses that, and he puts that face down on his player mat. Now the person he chose from then gets to choose from one of the other players one of the resources they're offering. So maybe he takes from the Carthage player a spice, and he puts that face down on his mat. Now, because he took from the Carthage player, it's now the Carthage player's turn to choose, but he cannot choose from Rome because two players cannot choose from each other twice in a row. So since Carthage took from Rome and then Rome took from Carthage, Carthage can now take from Rome again. So he's got to choose Greece. So maybe he takes a coin. Well, now it's Greece's turn to choose. He doesn't have a sheep. Maybe he's going to take a sheep from Rome. From Carthage. Well, now if it's Carthage's turn again, so again he can't take from Greece again, can't take from him twice in a row, so he's got to take one from Rome, so he'll choose this one. Now Rome gets to choose. Maybe he takes this coin from Greece. Now Greece gets to choose, and maybe he takes this sheep from Rome. From Carthage. Now Carthage gets to choose, and maybe he takes this coin, and then now Rome gets to choose. So the only thing left offered is this coin, so he puts it face down on his mat. Then once everybody has their resources, they can then take them and put them behind their mat, or put them behind their player screen. Now, when claiming resources, it may end up sometimes that the trade leader may end up claiming an extra resource, so one of the players got one less than anybody else, or than everybody else. In that case, if that does happen, then the trade leader has to take one of the resources, either one of the ones he claimed or one of the ones he still has behind his screen, and give it to that player who did not get the same amount as everybody else. So everybody should end up with the same amount of resources at the end of the same amount of claimed resources at the end of the trade resource phase. And then I will mention, I had said that players cannot take from each other 2 times in a row, but it may happen that if only 2 players remain to claim resources and they've each just taken one from each other, so they can't take another one from each other. If that happens and there's no one else to take from, then they just quit claiming resources at that point, and they put, if somebody still has some for offer, they just put them back behind their screen. Alright, so after the trade resources phase ended here, you'll see the players will end up having different resources than what they had at the end of the collect resources phase, because they'll have traded with other players. Now I will mention that the trade leader at the beginning of the trade resources phase in the next round, he will leave that token there, so he'll only have these ones to choose from, either the 1 or 2 or the 5. So he'll continue to leave those there until 3 have been placed there, and then when it's his turn again to place another token, then he can grab those back and use any of them. Or if the trade leader changes during the round and somebody is the new trade leader at the beginning of the next round, they go ahead and collect all the trade tokens, and they have the choice from all of them to place at the beginning of their trade resources phase. All right, next we have the build phase. So in the build phase, the player that is the culture leader chooses one player to be the active player. They can choose themselves or one of the other players, and that player will choose to build. Once that player has completed building whatever they're going to build, then the culture leader chooses another player to be the active player, and that player will build, and so on until all players have had a chance to build. So let's talk about how you build. So the trade leader, or the culture leader, is Greece. We'll say he selects himself to be the active player, so he's going to build first. So when you build, you can build most buildings and caravans and control markers at the cost of 3 resources. But the resources you spend can either be a set of coins. So if you're building something that costs 3 resources, it can be a set of 3 coins or 3 different commodities. So it couldn't be duplicates. So you could spend a stone and a grain and a oil, but you couldn't spend 2 sheep and a wine or 2 sheep and a coin. So again, when you're building, you have to spend the cost either in all coins or in different commodities. Kind of no duplicates. So we'll say, for example, Greece wanted to build control in Dacia here. Now you can build control into an adjacent or an adjoining province to one that you have, one that's adjacent or adjoining to a province where you already have control. And you had to have had that control at the beginning of the round, so you couldn't spend 3 resources to build control in Dacia and then spend another 3 to build control in Germania, because it is then adjacent to Dacia, because you didn't control that at the beginning of the round. So we mentioned you can build control into a province that is adjacent to one that you already had control in at the beginning of round, but I also said adjoining. So let's mention what adjoining is. A province is adjoining if there is a continuous set of a player's triremes that connect the two. So for instance, Thracia here is currently not adjoining to Asia because it's across this Mare Aegeum. But if Greece had a trireme in here, then this province is now adjoining. So he could, because he has control here, he could then, if he built a trireme here, he could then build control here because it's now adjoining. Or he could also build control here because that's all one sea space, so any of his provinces here are adjoining here to Crete. If he had another trireme here, then any of these provinces would now be adjoining here to this province or this province or this province, because their triremes are connecting. So a continuous change of triremes will adjoin 2 provinces. So as we said, maybe he wants to build control here in Dacia, so he would spend 3 coins, because that's a control marker costs 3, so he would just put them here, and then he could put one of his control markers in there. And once a player controls a province, he can then build in it. So then now maybe he could spend 3. He doesn't have any more coins, but he could spend 3 different. So he could spend this one, and this one. That's 3 different commodities. So when you spend them, you just put them back from the stack from which they came. And then now he could build a caravan in there. And then in the next round, in the collect resources phase, he would collect a wine from this caravan. For 3 resources, you can also build a trireme into a sea area that is adjacent to a province you control. So he controls any of these. He could build a trireme there for 3 resources. For there, he could build one there. This one is also adjacent here, so he could build one there. So you can build cities, fortresses, legions, markets, caravans, all in provinces you control, and you can build triremes in sea areas adjacent to provinces you control. However, if an opponent has units in a province that you control, like a legion, then you cannot build in that province. Their units in your province prevent you from building in that province. The only place that's an exception is in your home capital province, in which case even if there was enemy units in there, you can always build in there, in your home province. You can have any number of legions. You can build any number of legions in a province, but you can only build 1 fortress in a province. And I mentioned that you couldn't build any units in a province that has enemy units in it except for your home units. But you can build, like if there was an enemy trireme in this sea zone, that does not prevent the Greece player from building a trireme in that sea zone. So even if an enemy player has a trireme in a sea zone, if you're capable of building into that sea zone, you can. Their unit does not prevent that. And again, buildings, if you control a province, you can build buildings that are shown there. So for 3, you could build a legendary city here. Remember, the red border is legendary city. This is a temple. Now, temples cost 6, so that it's either 6 coins or 6 different commodities. Regular cities only cost 3 resources to build. Well, any city only costs 3 resources to build, so either coins or different commodities. Temples cost 6, as I mentioned, 6 resources, so either 6 coins or 6 different commodities. Caravans only cost 3 resources, but markets cost 6 resources. Again, either different commodities or 6 coins. And then heroes and wonders cost a different amount. Your first one that you purchase, you'll see costs 7, either 7 coins or 7 different commodities. The second one you purchase costs 8. The third one you purchase costs 9. And if you purchase the 5th one, it costs 10. That's one of the winning conditions. If you get your 5th hero or wonder, then you win the game at the end of the build phase. So that's one of the winning conditions. We'll talk about some of the other ones here in a little bit, but I just wanted to mention that. Now we should go ahead and talk about the heroes and wonders and the different abilities and bonuses they give you. So you remember you start with a starting hero, so Carthage starts with Hannibal. His ability is you can use um, one commodity type twice in a set that you're using to build. So, normally I said you had to use 3 different commodities, or 6 different commodities, or 7 different commodities, depending on what you're building. Well, if you have Hannibal, you can have 2 of the same commodities in that set. So, for example, you could have 2 sheep and a gold if you were building something that cost 3 commodities or 3 resources. Let's look at Pericles here for the Greece. We haven't talked about battles yet, but if he is not the active player, in other words, he would be the defending player. If he's the defending player in a battle, he gets to add +2 to all his die rolls. And Caesar's sort of similar to that, only you notice he's got a +1 in red instead of +2 as green. Here, that's if you're the defender. So Caesar's ability is if he's the active player, in other words, he's the attacker basically, he gets to add +1 to all his die rolls for land battles. And this is for land battles as well. Naval battles are different. And so I won't go over all of these, but let's say, for example, Perseus. If you buy him, that gives you you get to add 1 on your leader track here, 1 to your trade, 2 to your culture, and 1 to your military. So you would get to shift up, 1 to your trade, 2 to your culture, and 1 to your military along this track if you purchase Perseus. Also, he gives you the power to override the culture leader when he's choosing who's going to go first to build in the build phase. You can override him and choose yourself to go first if it's going to allow you to build your 5th hero or wonder and win the game, or if it's going to allow you to build the pyramids and win the game, which that's another way to win the game, is if you build the pyramids, which costs either 12 coins or 12 different commodities. So each of these heroes and wonders will give you different abilities, and some of them may move you up on the trade, culture, and military track. And their powers, each person gets this player aid at the beginning of the game, gets a copy of one, and it tells what all their powers are for all these wonders and heroes. So if you do end up purchasing one of these heroes or wonders, you take it from there and put it on the space you purchased. That shows that one costs 7. So again, then if you're going to purchase another one, it would cost you 8, either coins or different commodities. And then at the end of the build phase, any of these spaces that are empty will then flip a new one over there to replace it. So you'll always have 5 at the end of the build phase. Now, again, that's in your first few games. After that, you just start with all of them face up, so they're always all available after you've played several games to become familiar with it. So again, that's the build phase. The culture leader will choose a person to be the active player. That player will then build as much as he can or wants to. Then the culture leader will choose another player to be the active player, and that player will build as much as he or she wants to. And then finally, of course, in a 3-player game, then the third player would then get chosen to be the active player, and they would build as much as they can or want to. And once everybody's had a chance to build, then that ends the build phase, and you go on to the move and battle phase. I should mention that as you're building, you can, as you build a caravan, for each caravan you build, that moves you up 1 on the trade track. For each market that you build, that moves you up. You move up one on the trade track. So you can adjust those as you build, or at least at the end of your build turn, then you adjust everything. So you move up on the culture track if you build a city or a temple. For each one you build, you move up one on the culture track. And then the military, for each trireme, fortress, or legion that you build, that will move you up on the military track. Now, similarly, when you are in battles or something and you lose military, triremes or fortresses or legions, that will move you down. If you lose a province and no longer control certain buildings, and then another player gets those, you'll move down on the culture track and they'll move up, etc. So as you gain or lose caravans, markets, buildings, temples, military units, you'll move up and down on these tracks. All right, let's talk next about the move and battle phase. So whoever is the military leader will decide who's the active player, and they will move in battle first, so he can choose himself or one of the other players. When they choose a player to be an active player, then that player first will move and battle with any triremes if they want to, and then after they've done that, then they'll move and battle with any of their legions if they want to. So you always do sea movement first and then your land movement second. So if you are going to move and battle with triremes, you can move one of your triremes to an adjacent sea zone. If you're going to move, you have to move all triremes you're going to move first before you battle. So you do all your sea movement, and then if you have triremes in the same sea zone, sea area as an opponent's, then you decide whether you want to attack or not. So, if the military leader is the Rome player, so we'll say he decides, he's going to do some sea movement, so he can move each of his triremes to an adjacent sea zone. So he'll move this one here, and then he'll move this one here, and then he makes the decision. Just because triremes are in a sea zone with an opponent's triremes, you don't have to initiate battle. So you decide whether or not you're going to initiate battle. But if you are going to initiate battle, you have to resolve that battle before moving your land units. So let's just say this is the situation where Rome moved in here with these Carthage triremes, and Rome decides, yes, I do want to initiate a battle. So to resolve the battle, each player involved in the battle will roll one blue sea die for each of their triremes in the battle. So in this case, they would each roll blue. Carthage would roll 2 blue sea dice, and Rome would roll 2 because they each have 2 triremes. I just pulled this little wooden tray out to be my dice tray. So we'll say this is Rome's roll. He'll get these 2 blue sea battle dice. And again, they're in Roman numerals, so that's a 3 and a 4. So he'll take those, and then this is Carthage's roll. He got a 5 and a 4. I'm assuming most people know how to read these Roman numerals. If not, there is a thing in the manual that shows, the game manual, that shows you how to convert them. But then each side will sum their die roll and divide that by 5. So in this case, we got 4 and 3 and 7. You divide by 5 and round down. So 5 going into 7 is just going to be 1. And this player over here, the Carthage player, got a 4 and a 5. So that's 9. Rounded down is still just going to be 1. So they both get 1 hit. And the player who is dealt the hit decides which unit he wants to remove. Now in a sea battle, that doesn't really matter because that's all there is triremes in a land battle you have legions and fortresses, so it does make a difference there. But in this case, they both took one hit, so they would both have to remove one of their triremes, which would move them each down, one on their military track as well. But that's it. There's only one roll of the dice, so that would end the battle at that point. Now, if you had other sea zones where you had triremes in there together, you would decide in each sea zone, if you were the active player and you moved your trireme in a sea zone with another player, you would decide in each one whether you want to initiate a battle or not. But a battle just consists of one roll, and whatever hits uh, are done there, then those units are removed, and whatever's left remains. Now, of course, that was Rome is the active player. Then after he's done with all his sea and land battles, then he's going to choose another active player. So eventually it will be Carthage will be the active player. And in this situation, he could decide whether he wants to move his trireme out of there, or he could just leave it there and initiate a sea battle against that Roman trireme again. If there's more than one opponent and you want to initiate a battle, you just choose which one you're going to attack. You don't attack both of them. So after you've done your sea movement and battles, then the active player does any land movement and battles that they want to do. So if the Roman player, maybe he wants to move in here and attack Greece. He's only got one guy, but Greece has only got one guy, so he wants to move in there. And you do all your movement first before you battle. Now, you can move your legions to an adjacent province or to an adjoining province. So in this case, because Rome has a trireme here and a trireme here, these provinces are adjoining. So maybe he wants to move both of these legions here to this province here. All right, so then after all your movement, then you do your battles. Now, it's different from sea battles where you have the option to initiate a battle. On land, if you have units in the same province as an opponent, then you must have a battle. And it works similar as to the sea battles, that you roll one die for each legion you have in the province where the battle is taking place. So the Roman player here would roll 2 land battle dice. So he would get to roll both of these. Now, because he's the active player and his power is in land battles, he gets to add 1 to each of his battle dice. When he's the active player or the attacker, he would get to do that in this case. So he gets to roll 2. So he got a 3 and a 4, but he gets to add 1 to each of them. So he gets a 4 and a 5, which is 9, which still divided by 5, that's just 1 hit. Then the Carthaginian player has 1 legion in there, so he gets to roll 1 dice. Now he does have a fortress in there, but the fortress doesn't get to roll a die. What the fortress does is negate 1 hit, so that's going to negate the hit that the Roman player got, and it also adds 5 to the owning player's battle dice total, so he'll get to add 5 to whatever this die roll is. Now, even if he was rolling 2 dice, you would sum those 2 dice and then just add 5, so it's not plus 5 to each die, it's add 5 to the total battle dice roll for that player. So 3 plus 5 is 8, so divided by 5, he just gets 1 hit. So they each got 1 hit, but the fortress negates the Roman hit. The Roman will have to take a hit that he got from the Carthaginian player, so he'll have to remove one of his guys. And of course that would move him down on the military track for losing a legion. And then we would have a battle here between the Roman and the Greek, where they would each just get to roll 1. There's no fortress or anything involved there. Although The Greek player, because he's the defender and has the power when he's the defender, he gets to add 2 to his roll, and the Roman player would get to add 1 to his roll. And so that's how that would be resolved. So it would be the same, 1 battle die roll. They each have 1 dice, but the green player would get to add 2 to his, and the red player would get to add 1 to his. So I guess we'll just go ahead and play that out. So here's the Roman's roll. He got 4 plus 1 is 5, so he gets the +1. So that would be 1 hit. The Greek player gets to add 2 to his, 7. 5 plus 2 is 7, so that would be 1 hit. So they would both eliminate each other. And as I said, just like the naval battles, it's just 1 roll and then the battle's over. So these guys would both be eliminated. There would be the green player would still control that because his control marker is there. You don't have to have a legion to maintain control. However, down here, after the battle roll, we still had 1 legion of each player in there. So now that province is considered to be at war. So after your battle roll, if both players still have legions or fortress in the province, then that province is said to be at war. Now, other players that still have not taken their move in battle turn could still move in there and battle, and that may choose the outcome. But if not, then that province is said to be at war. Now, this says it's a Kickstarter exclusive. It's a war token where you put in a province that's at war to show that it's at war. I mean, that doesn't really look like much of a Kickstarter exclusive to me, but that's what it says it is on this token. But that marks that province is at war. I guess if you don't have the Kickstarter edition, you just know because there's 2 units of the same, of different empires in the province. So at the end of the round, if there's still opposing empires in a province and that province is at war, then that still provides, during the collect resources phase, that will still provide resources for the controlling player, which in this case it would be the Carthaginian. So he would still get to collect his resources here, the sheep and the spice, and he would still collect his coins. But in the build phase, he cannot build in there. Well, actually, this is a bad example because it's his capital province. He could still build in there, but we'll say if it was this one, even though he could collect resources in the build phase, he could not build units or caravans or markets or anything in this province. Now let's give another example of another outcome. Let's say that the Roman player had defeated the Greek player's legion up here, but he had not lost his. He had not gotten a hit. So he managed to wipe out the Greek legions in here, and now he has conquered this province. So the attacker becomes the conqueror if he's the only player to have units in the opponent-controlled province. So in this case, you have a few options. So you can pillage 1 caravan or 1 building, meaning 1 city or 1 temple, any kind of city or temple, or a market. And you do that by removing whichever building or caravan or market or whatever it is that you're deciding to pillage. You remove it and put one of your legions that is in that province on top of the space. So if it was the market, or if it was down here, you could remove one of these buildings, cities or temple, and put your legion on there. So whichever one you're pillaging, you remove it and put one of your legions on top of it, one of your legions that were in that province. So if you destroy a city or a capital city, then you get 1 coin. If you destroy a caravan like we did in this example, then you get to take one of the one commodity that caravan was next to, so you'd get to take one grain commodity and put it into your supply. If you destroy a market or a temple, then you don't gain any immediate benefit, but of course you're then depriving your opponent of the benefit they normally gain from that market or temple. If you conquered a province that had a legendary city, then and you occupied that and you destroyed that legendary city, then you get to have your choice of either taking a coin or a legendary commodity. Okay, so that's one of your options to uh, pillage and destroy, a building or a caravan and get whatever bonus or reward that I mentioned. All right, another one of your options is to occupy a building. So instead of destroying, if you're going to occupy, instead of destroying, you can place your legion. And if you took over this province with, like say he had taken over this province with a couple of legions, then he could occupy two buildings or two caravans. So what happens when you occupy instead of destroying, you don't get an immediate benefit. But during that next resource collection phase, like if this was the case, during the next resource collection phase, the conqueror, the player occupying these spaces, would gain the grain and the wine instead of the controlling player. And also, occupied buildings or caravans or whatever count toward your leader track. So if Rome occupied these two caravan spaces, he would move up two on the trade track here, and the Greece player would move down on the trade track because he would have lost two caravans and the Rome would have gained them as long as they're occupied. And it would be the same with buildings. If you occupied buildings, you would gain the benefit from them during the resource collection phase, and you would move up on the culture track, and the other player would move down on the culture track. Any unoccupied buildings, which in this case there aren't, but if there were unoccupied buildings, they would still, the controlling player, in this case Greece, would still collect the resources from those. Only the occupied buildings or caravans or whatever are collected by the conquering player. And then as soon as the occupying legions would leave that province, then they would go back to being controlled by the controlling player. So if in a future move-in battle phase this player decided he needed these legions elsewhere and moved them out, then they would go back where green would collect from them. All right, another thing you can do instead of occupying a building or a caravan is to occupy the provincial control marker. If you do that, then in a future round you can convert that control marker to one of your own, but you can only do that if that province is adjacent to a province, adjacent or adjoining to a province that you already control. So in this case, it is adjacent to a province he controls. So if you occupy that control marker, if at the beginning of your move-in battle phase in the next round, at the beginning of when you're the active player in the move-in battle phase in the next round, if you still occupy that control marker, then you get to flip it to your control, and then you control everything in that province. So again, just to summarize, if you do move into a province and defeat all the enemy legions and fortresses there, then you're the conqueror, and you have the option of either occupying, either pillaging one building or market or caravan or whatever, or occupying as many as you can with as many of your legions you have in that province, or you can occupy the control marker. So So you can only do one of those options. You can't say pillage and occupy the control marker, or occupy several buildings and the control marker. You can't do that. You have your choice to either pillage or occupy several buildings or caravans or markets, or occupy the control marker. All right, that should cover that. And as I think I mentioned before, the home province of each empire, that control can never be converted. It's printed on the map, so they never lose control of that. They can always build there and so forth. So it's only the provinces where they have a control marker where you can gain control, take control of that by occupying their control marker. But after every player has had a turn to be the active player in the move and battle phase, then we move on to the last phase, which is the claim leadership phase. So in the claim leadership phase, you look at each track, the trade track, and whoever is highest on that track would become the leader. If it's a tie, then the player that was last trade leader gets to decide among the tied players for highest who gets to maintain it. So in this case, Carthage and Rome are tied. The last trade leader was Carthage. He would probably pick himself to maintain as the trade leader. And you do the same for the culture track and the military track. Whoever is the highest on that track is the leader, becomes the leader on that track. And if it's a tie for highest, whoever the last person was decides amongst those tied players who is the leader. And after you've done that, that ends the round, and then you start over again at the collect resources phase. All right, so how do you win? Well, I've already explained a couple of ways. If a player builds the pyramids in the build phase, they immediately win. If a player builds their 5th hero and wonder onto their empire mat during the build phase, they immediately win, or they win at the end of the build phase. However, if more than one player builds their 5th hero and wonder during the build phase, if one of those players holds the culture leadership, then they win. If neither one of those players happen to hold the culture leadership, then they share the victory. If at the end of the claim leadership phase, one player is the leader in all 3 categories, trade, culture, and military, then they win the game. And finally, the last possible victory condition is if a player controls or occupies 4 legendary or capital cities. So, for example, if the Rome player, he controls his capital city here in Rome, and then maybe he controlled this province and built a city on this legendary city, that would be 2. And then if he occupied the capital city of Greece here, that would be 3. And then maybe he controlled and built a legendary city here in Troy, that would be 4. Then he would win the game. So it's if you control 4 capital and or legendary cities. And then you would win at the end of the move and battle phase if that occurred. All right, so those are the different ways you can win the game. And otherwise, players just keep playing, rounds keep going until one player has completed one of those victory conditions. All right, well, that is how you play. I'm going to go ahead and set everything back up to how it was right after setup, and we'll go through a few example turns. All right, I hopefully got everything set back up. Oh, now that control marker shouldn't be there. Okay, now I hopefully have everything set back up how it should have been right after we did setup. So we'll do a few example turns. Alright, the first phase is the collect resources phase, but in the first round of the game that was done during setup, so we won't do that again. So then we move on to the trade resources phase. So the trade leader, which is Carthage, he's going to choose which kind of exchange token he wants to put, and kind of like how I did in my how to play, he's going to choose the 3 resource tokens. So now all the players will choose 3 resources, put them face down in front of their player screens. And I'll probably do it just like I did in my how to play. Alright, so they've all got them face down. So now the trade leader gets the first choice. Oh, well, once they all have them put face down, then they all turn them over. Once everybody's got them. Alright, now the trade leader gets the first choice. He's going to choose a metal. He's going to put that face down on his sheet. Now, because he chose from Rome, he gets to choose, so he's going to choose a spice. He's going to put that first down on his sheet. Now, the same players can't choose from each other twice in a row, so now he's going to take from Greece, so he's going to take a coin. Now, Greece gets to take something. We'll say he's going to take this metal. Now, he chose from Rome, so now Rome gets to take something. He'll take a coin. He took from Greece, and now it's Greece's turn. He'll go ahead and take a sheep. Since he took from Carthage, now Carthage gets their turn, and they will take this wine. Now since Rome got taken from, he gets to choose. He'll take another coin from Greece. And since Greece is now his turn, Rome doesn't have anything, so the only choice he has is to take this sheep from Carthage. And now they all ended up with 3 resources, which is how it should work out. So now they'll just take their resources and put them into their behind their player screens. Alright, so that's all done, and if Carthage remains the trade leader, then next time he'll have to choose one of these tokens, as that one will stay there. Alright, now we move on to the build phase. The culture leader is Greece, so they get to pick a player to be the active player. Any one of the players, again, they can choose themselves, and that's what they'll do. They do have 6 different commodities here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That will leave them 1 sheep. So they will take these 6 commodities. They're going to put them back here. Let me do that. Alright, put the 6 commodities, and for that I'm going to buy a market. And we'll put that right here. So next collect resources phase, I'll get 2 of those and 2 of those. And I don't have enough coins to buy anything, and this 1 commodity isn't going to do me any good. This player aid that each player has does kind of show what you can get and for their costs. So for 3 commodities or coins, you can get control, build a city, build a caravan, a fort, a legion or a trireme. For 6, you can get a temple or a market, and for 7 to 10, you can get, a hero or wonder. Alright, that's all he can do, so that's going to end his build turn as being the active player for build. So now he'll choose one of the other 2 active players, so he'll choose the Roman player. So we'll say the Roman player, he's got 3 coins, so he's going to spend those to get control, if I can grab that, to take control of Germania. He can do that because he owned Gallia already at the beginning of the round. It's adjacent to it, so he can take control there. And now he'll spend 3 different commodities. This one, and this one. Alright, he put those 3 commodities there, and then he's going to build a caravan there in that new territory, or province that he just took control of. And then he still has three different commodities, so he's going to spend those as well. And with those, he's going to buy a legion and put that in his new territory. Now I forgot green bought a market, so that should have raised him up 1 here on this trade track. And now Rome bought a caravan, so that will move him up 1 on the trade track. And then he also bought a legion, so that's going to move him up 1 on the military track. Alright, the Roman player can't do anything else. He's out of resources, so now the culture leader will choose the final remaining player in a 3-player game to do their build phase. So that's going to be here, the Carthaginian player. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different resources. 7 different commodities, so he's going to spend those to go ahead and buy a one of the heroes or wonders up here. And we'll just say he's going to buy Perseus, that one we talked about during the how to play, so he'll not. Alright, so he's going to move up 1 on the trade track, 2 on the culture track, and 1 on the military track. So we'll have him do that. 1 on the trade, 2 on the culture, and 1 on the military. And then he also has that ability where during the build phase he can override the current culture leader and make himself first in the build phase, if that's going to allow him to either build the pyramids or his 5th hero or wonder to win the game. Alright, and then all he has left is 2 coins, so he can't really get anything with that. Now, I'm not sure I mentioned this in the rules overview, so I'm going to have to go back and put a note. At the end of the build phase, any commodities that you did not spend, you have to discard those. So he's got to get rid of this 1 sheep, and then you can only keep up to 2 coins. So he doesn't have anybody, it doesn't matter. He's only got 2, and he's only got 2. But if you had more than 2, you would have to discard those as well. And now, because we're at the end of the build phase and we don't have 5 face up, we go ahead and turn 1 more of these face up, and we got Spartacus. Alright, so now we'll move on to the move in battle phase. The current military leader is Rome, so he'll pick somebody to be the active player and be the first in the move in battle phase. He'll pick, he's going to pick Greece to be first. Well, Greece doesn't really want to move or battle, so he's not going to do anything. And then so Rome says, okay, he's going to choose himself. He's not going to move or battle as well. And so finally we come to Carthage, and he's not going to move or battle either. So nothing exciting in the move or battle phase there. And so now we move on to the last phase, claim leadership. Both Carthage and Rome are at 8 on the trade track, but because Carthage is the current trade leader, he breaks the tie, so he chooses himself to remain trade leader. Green is still higher on the culture track, so he remains the culture leader. And red is still highest on the military track, so he remains the military leader. So no change there. Alright, so now we begin a new round with the collect resources phase. So Carthage will get a gladiator and a gold, 2 spice, 2 sheep, 1 coin, a oil, and a sheep. So pretty much what they got at the beginning of the game. They didn't build anything new there. Alright, so I've collected those resources for them. Greece will get pretty much the same. No, they'll get 1 extra. Because they built this market, they'll get 1 extra grain and 1 extra wine. So let me collect their resources. Alright, so they got 2 grain, 2 wine, 1 stone, 1 oil, and then 4 coins for this and 1 coin for this, so 5 coins. So that's what they got. And Rome will get all of the same starting resources they had, but they'll also get this gem since they built a caravan there. So let me get theirs. Alright, so I've collected their resources. That'll now end the collect resource phase. We now move on to the trade resources phase. The trade leader is still Carthage, so he's got to use one of his things. He'll go ahead and say 5. They got to trade 5 resources. So now the players will now put out 5 resources face down initially that they want to put up for trade. Alright, so they each put up 5 resources face down in front of their player screens. Once everyone's put them, then they reveal what they are. Alright, so there's Greece's 5 and Rome's 5, and then since Carthage is still the trade leader, they get to choose the first resource. So they take a medal from Rome, put it upside down on their mat. Now Rome gets to choose one from somebody. They're going to take a coin from Greece, so now Greece gets to choose something. They're going to take a sheep from Carthage. Now Carthage gets to choose something. They'll take a wine from Rome. Now Rome gets to choose something. They'll take a spice from Carthage. Now Carthage gets to choose something. They can't take it from Rome because they can't take twice in a row. So they're going to take from Greece. So they'll take this. Now Greece gets to choose something. They'll take a sheep from Carthage. Now Carthage gets to choose something they can't take from Greece because they just did. So they'll take a coin. Now Rome gets to take something. They're going to take a coin. Now Greece gets to take something. They're going to take they'll take a medal here. Now Rome gets to take something. They're going to take, I guess they'll take this wine. Now they get to take something. They're going to take this coin. Now he gets to take something. He'll take this sheep. And he gets to take something. He'll take this coin. And he gets to take something. He'll take this coin. Alright, so they all end up with 5. Alright, and then they just put them on their mats. Alright, everybody's got their resources on their mats. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. It was kind of hard to keep track of when I was doing it and talking and filming at the same time. If I did end up getting out of order or something like I did during the how to play, I'll comment on it in the video. But that ends the trade resources phase. Now we go to the build phase. Greece is still ahead on the culture track, so they decide who's first in the build phase. I'm going to go ahead and play ahead through the build phase and probably through the move and battle phase unless I get to a battle or something, and then I'll come back. I'm going to wait until I get to something we haven't seen yet, and then I'll come back and show that. All right, I just finished the round, and the Rome player did end up higher on the trade track, so he'll end up being the trade leader. So now, because he's the trade leader, he takes all these markers. He's not limited to just the one that the Carthage player would have had if he had remained the trade leader. So the Rome player will have his choice to play all of those when it gets to the trade resources track. So they got to be careful now not to let the Roman player get ahead on the culture track, because if he gets all three of those, then he's going to be the winner. But the Carthage player built another hero, Spartacus, so they've also got to be careful not to let him get those last two heroes or wonders there, or he'll end up winning the game. Alright, so I'm going to start the next round. I'm going to do the collect resources. Again, I'll come back when I get to something we haven't seen. Alright, I'm in the build phase. Culture leader is still Greece. He's going to choose him as the active player first. He's going to spend 3 coins, and he's going to build control here in Asia, and he can do that because he's got a trireme here, so that makes it adjacent or adjoining to any of these really. So he's going to put a control here that cost him 3, and then he's going to spend 3 different commodities, and he's going to build a city in the legendary city there. So he'll take one of these legendary city tokens and put it there, and that will move him up 1 on the culture. Then he'll spend another 3 different commodities to build a legion. Where's the sheep? He'll build a legion right here, and of course that will move him up 1 on the military. And he still has another 3 different commodities, so he'll spend those. And he will build another caravan up here in Dacia, so that will move him up 1 on the trade track. Alright, that's all he's going to be able to build. Alright, I'll come back when we see something different. Alright, I just finished the build phase. Rome built a hero there, so we have to replace the missing one with a new one. Hamilcar. He got Ramses II, and his power allows him to roll 1 additional die in all land battles. And now we're moving on to the move and battle phase, and Red is still the military leader, so he's going to choose the first active player. He's going to choose himself, and we'll go ahead and do a battle. We'll say he doesn't have any triremes, so he's not going to move and battle with any sea units, so he's going to go straight to his land units. He's going to move both of these, and he could move this one too, but then that would make him vulnerable here. No, he's just going to move these 2 legions here into Dacia, and so that's going to initiate a battle. So he would normally get to roll just 2 land battle dice, but because he got Ramses, which allows him to roll an additional one, he gets to roll 3 land battle dice. And because of his Caesar power, he adds 1. Because he's the active player, he gets to add 1 to each of them. So he got a 6 and a 3 and a 3, so that's actually a 7 and a 4, that's 11, and 4 is 15. So divided by 5 is 3. So 3 hits. He really only needed 1 hit, but green gets to roll as well, and he gets to add 2 to his because he's the defender. So he got a 6, so divided by 5, it's still 1 hit. So red takes a hit and green takes 3 hits, but he can only take 1 hit because he only has 1 unit there. So he'll remove 1 unit. That's going to move him down 1 on the military. Red took a hit, so he's got to lose 1 unit, and that will move him down 1 on the military. But now he is the conquering player here because he defeated all green's forces. So now he gets to choose whether he wants to pillage or occupy either one of these 2 caravans or occupy the control marker. And I think he's going to choose to occupy the control marker. But now red has to choose another player to be the active player. He chooses Carthage. Carthage says he's not going to move or battle. Now he chooses Greece. Greece says he is going to move. Now he's not going to move his trireme and do any battle with that because there's nobody for him to battle. But he is going to move his 2 legions into Dacia and start a battle there. Now he won't get his +2 because he is the active player, not the inactive player, so he's the attacker. So he won't get to add 2, but he does get to roll 2 dice because he's got 2 units there. And he got 2 3s, so total of 6 divided by 5, rounded down as 1. So he did get 1 hit. The Rome player doesn't get his +1 to his dice because he's not the active player, but he does get to roll 1 additional die, so he gets to roll 2 die as well. And he got 4, 5, 6, 7 divided by 5, so they each get 1 hit. So the red's got to remove, so he's not going to get to convert that after all, and he's got to go down 1 on the military. And green took a hit as well, so he has to remove 1, and he's got to go down 1 on the military. But now green isn't going to lose control of that territory. Alright, so that's going to end the move and battle phase. Now we move to the claim leadership. Both Rome and Carthage are tied, but since Rome had the leadership last, he'll decide to keep it. You know, he breaks the tie, he decides to keep it. Green remains in charge of the culture track, and now all players are tied here at 4 units. 4 on the military track, but because red is the current military leader, he breaks the tie, so he'll leave himself as the military leader. Anyway, I think I've showed a good idea of how the game plays here. This video's gone on pretty long. I'm going to wrap it up. But I enjoy this game. I think the last time I played it multiplayer, I mean, I just played it the other day by myself as 3 players to relearn the rules, but last time I played it multiplayer was, gosh, I think all the way back 2019. But we had a blast playing this game. It was a lot of fun. We played it with 4 players, and yeah, we just had a good time. So I enjoy and recommend this game. There is an expansion, or several, I guess, modular expansions that came. I know they came with the Kickstarter. I don't know if this game or any of the expansions are still available in retail, but I can recommend it if it looks good to you. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.